Good for you. Very nice. Okay, shall we start? We have a very intensive class tonight. Actually, this is the last class. Today is the last class of this course. I will also talk about it later on. I will start a new class. It will be December 16 that the class will start, but we'll have some gaps because of Christmas and everything. So, but we'll have a class that will go on, and I'll talk about what the class is all about later on. So, but today is our last class for the Psychology of Tantra. So we'll start with taking refuge. Sangye chudang tsoke chaknam la jang chubadu dakni keptu chi daki chinso kimpe sonam ki dola penche sangye chupasho. Sangye chudang tsoke chaknam la jang chubadu dakni keptu chi Daki chinso kimpe sonam ki dola penche sangye chupasho. Sangye chudang soki chaknam la janchu badu lakni keptu chi. Daki chinso kimpe sonam ki dola penche sangye chupasho. So just, to remind ourselves, where are we? What is the context that we're going through? So the reason why we started this course of the Psychology of Tantra, because I had, and Lamelina also had many, many, many questions regarding how Tantra works. Because you have been given some kind of an introduction to a specific deity. That's how Tantra works. You've been introduced to a deity. You've been given a script, which is the sadhana. And then by faith or belief, you are supposed to do something that you don't know how it works. So basically what we do is that we try to understand how that has an effect on our psyche, on our mind, because we are saying that Tantra is a transformative process, that we transformative our mind. Within lifetime, we can get enlightened. So in Tibet and in India, when people were just born into this culture, there was no question about how it works. I mean, it's only us, the Westerner, who think that we need to know how it works. So they got the introduction to the deity, they got the sadhana, they started to practice that or not, and they saw the influence on others. They saw very realized teachers. They saw maybe even, enlightened beings. So they knew that it's going to work, right? So what's happening now when we are in the West and we don't know how it works? So I thought that to try to understand how things are working in Tantra, that will be some kind of a benefit to some of us, the Westerners, who the how question is always in the right place, right? How does this work? It's like a child that you give them a present of a car or something, and he says, how it works. And then he starts to to break it into pieces in order to see how it works, and then try to make it again and to compile it again, and not always succeeding. So let's hope that this Tantra practice will not be like the broken car. So we started the process by trying to understand in a different course what are the origins of Tantra, right? So if you haven't seen that, so go and see that. It's on my YouTube, Lupandorit, and you can see the origins of Tantra. There is a lot of information share there that people are really missing to try to understand what is Tantra all about. And then when we went into the second part, which is the how, the psychology of Tantra, or how Tantra works, we started to go over a few of the, I would say, main issues that Tantra is presenting. First of all, we talked about the foundations. The foundations in Tantra are mainly that you cannot just, jump into those high waves ocean and hope that you will survive. There is a need to know how to swim, and to need to know how to swim is the foundation that are laid in the, I would say, the Nyundru part. Not necessarily doing 100,000 from each one of them. Some teachers do recommend that, but others are not. Lama Lina, for example, highly recommend the Nyundru, but she doesn't go for the, I will say, the counting part, okay? She can see if somebody needs the counting part. She can see which one of the Nyundru someone needs. And there is a reason why we need to have the foundation, because if we don't have the infrastructure or the foundation infrastructure, so what will happen? That we'll start to build the parts of the building, or what we call the mandala, without an infrastructure. It's very easily people will break down. Now, breaking down, there are different ways that this structure will break down. One of them is that someone will just, he or she will not have the interest in this practice anymore, and they'll just stop practicing. If we don't have a solid infrastructure, that happens very often. The infrastructure is not just the Nyundru. The infrastructure is also the forethought that turns out the mind. What is karma, what is suffering, or how karma works, what is suffering, the impermanence, and all those issues that we are trying to learn again and again. It's in the book of The Word of My Perfect Teacher, and also Lama Lina taught it. It's online, and Palger Rinpoche also taught it. It's on Lama Lina's YouTube channel. So we do need a strong infrastructure. Then we go, assuming that we already have the infrastructure, we're going to watch ourselves. Watching ourselves, meaning try to see what are the issues that we are facing in our life, regardless of Tantra. Meaning that if we have instability in our psyche, most probably we will drop out of Tantra, either in a nice manner, which will, okay, it's not interesting anymore, or it might also concern and bring a situation where we might have a breakdown. And as I told you, in the previous classes that we already did, I saw too many cases of that with my friends and colleagues and Vajra sisters and brothers around the world, for both, either to just lost interest or have some kind of a breakdown. So we do have to strengthen the infrastructure of our own psyche. And as it might sound very weird, but as weird as it sounds, it's to strengthen our ego. Because sometimes there is a false saying that Tantra is about destroying the ego, which is not true. And His Holiness is saying that again and again and again. You're not supposed to destroy the ego. In Tantra, what we do is, if we don't have a strong ego, I'm not talking about egomaniac, okay? I'm talking about a functioning ego, okay? If we have a functioning ego, so in Tantra, at one point we transform this ego into something else. But if we don't have the ego, the function ego, there is nothing to be transformed. So when we spoke about the vessel, there was a whole class, I think, that we did about the vessel. We are the vessel, okay? So we spoke about what does it mean? What are the circumstances that bring us into this situation? And then we took more than one class, or maybe it was two, I think, to emphasize the role of the teacher. And since this is a very sensitive issue with regard to the Westerners, there were many questions and there were many issues that we wanted to tackle. So we did that in the last two classes. I know that some of you wrote to me and say there was an issue with the recording. Mistakenly, the recording of class 4 was brought up again rather than having the class 5, which was the role of the teacher. So it's already there on the channel, so you can watch the last two classes, 4 and 5, are actually emphasizing the role of the teacher. Because those are the basic components of Tantra, okay? It's the fact that we have a strong foundation. On that, we start to build something. But if we don't have a strong functional ego, so the whole building will just, the whole mandala will just crash down. And then somebody needs to help us to build this beautiful mandala in order to transform ourselves into enlightened being. And that's the role of the teacher. So if you haven't seen that, go and watch that because it's very important. Now, I want to open up a little bit of information with regard to the tool, the main tool that we are using in Tantra. And the main tool is the deity. Sometimes it's called deity, sometimes it's called yidam, sometimes the psychological world is archetype, actually. But in ancient time, it was yidam or deity. That was the name. So although I'm saying deity as one, we have multiple of deities, and each one of them is functioned differently. So as we said now, the reason why I want to introduce you into the psychology of Tantra that has to do with the deity, how we work, because mainly we work with the deity. It's true that within the sadhana, we have this kind of script that creates, we don't know how, but it's created the mandala, okay? And we are working in the environment of this deity. I'm saying within the environment because, as I said, in the origins of Tantra, I spoke about it and I don't want to go again about it. There are different types of practicing Tantra. It's either working with a deity external, which is the Kriya Tantra and Charya Tantra, or working with the deity to bring it in and then to be the deity, which is the Yoga Tantra and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. And what I'm going to refer to is not the working with the deities external to us, because the deities are not gods. They're not gods. We are so used to have a god that is external to us. And I don't care about which kind of tradition you're following. I mean, either Christian or Catholic or Judaism or Islamic, something is outside and we see them as a god and we give them a lot of power. And Buddhism is not about that, okay? So I want to talk about those archetypes, and I'll speak about archetypes, and you will know now that I'm talking about the deity or the yidam, because the right word in the psychology, in the Tantra psychology, is archetype. So the deities are actually, are an external expression of these awakened qualities. Okay? They're not gods. Each one of the deities that we refer to is an archetype of enlightened qualities. We see them as enlightened qualities. And they have a representation. And there are a lot of times that people are asking, so which deity should I practice? I'm not talking about which deity should I take initiation, because we already talked about the process of initiation or empowerment. I'm talking about which deity should I take? So sometimes when you go to a teacher who knows you, and they see what you need to enhance, what you need to strengthen, to create a strong something within you. So we know, for example, that if you practice, I don't know, Chen Rizik, it's increased the compassion, because the main qualities of Chen Rizik are compassion. And if you want to increase your wisdom, it's not your IQ, okay? It's the level of understanding of emptiness and karma and how things are working in the world from the perspective of Buddhism, of course. So you want to practice Manjushri. If you want to create a fierce transformation, so you can take either Yamantaka or Vajrakilaya, because the fierce aspect is very strong there. If you want to enhance the bliss and emptiness, so you go with Chakrasamvara or Vajrayogini. And what all the high-level teachers are saying, and of course the Buddha said it by himself, is that you want to take one thing, one deity, one archetype, and go through in order to embed the qualities within you. The qualities that the deity has will be embedded in you. You don't know yet how. I will explain it later on, but it will be embedded within you if you'll practice the same practice again and again and again. Jumping from one practice to another, not going to help. Not because the deity cannot help or the script is lousy. No, the sadhana is amazing. And each one of those sadhanas have the potential to make this transformative. But it's because we are not embedding the qualities within us. And that takes time. So those deities are an expression of the awakened qualities. They are not external gods. Each one of them has a different function. And in different times, we need to practice different deities. But please stay with one deity. Lama Lina says, she always said, at least one cycle of the moon, which we mean month. I heard her saying in different occasions, 3 months at least. From my experience, it depends how you practice this. If you're going into a lerung, which is a silent, isolated retreat that you're just focusing all day long, even during the dream, about the practice, the sadhana, the mantras and everything, the influence, of course, will be much faster. But if you're just practicing once a day, very short, doing 7 mantras or not doing the sadhana at all, so the influence might take, 20 years or something like that. So, but it's still going to have an influence, okay? So how working with the archetypes, with these awakened qualities, how it affects and how it works. Again, we are Westerners, we want to know how it works. So we know that the deity practice, there is a say that the deity practice transform those psychological patterns that we have. We already spoke about karma. So we know that we have psychological patterns, okay? Either I'm getting angry very, very fast, or whenever there is a confrontation coming up, I'm avoiding. Those are patterns, right? Or maybe I have a tendency to jealous when somebody brings something. I want something and somebody else has it and I don't have it. So I'm just getting very jealous. Maybe I'm very stingy, like I want everything to stay with me, or maybe I'm very generous. So this is also a pattern, by the way, okay? I'm not talking about only the bad patterns. I'm talking about very good patterns. For example, people are very compassionate or people are very generous. So those are also psychological patterns. Now, we don't want to hold those good qualities of the deity, like, for example, very wisdom or generosity or compassion or those qualities. We don't want to hold them. But if we do have some kind of what we call clashes is the negative emotions that we have. And that I'll talk about it later on because that's the next course I'm gonna offer you. Lamalina asked me to do it in a different way. It's working with emotions. So what happens? It's that we want to work with with something that will help us to transform those patterns. Now, we know that even if, let's say, I'm full with, I don't know, with jealousy, for example, okay? Let's say that I'm a very jealous person, and that happens in my life. And I'm working in a workplace, and 3 or 4 times a day, I have this raise of jealousy because of something that happens around me. How do I work in order to lower this? At the beginning, we want to lower the degree of the jealousy, and then we want to transform it into something else. But we'll talk about it in the next course, how we transform and how it goes. So the teacher comes and say, the Buddha comes and say, you want to visualize the deity, the archetype. And that's, you don't know how, but it's reshape old patterns that we have, the karmic patterns that we have, by introducing new patterns, because the deity contains new patterns. The deity is full with compassion, full with love, full with wisdom, full with fierce energy. We don't know how it works. It works on our internal psychic, okay? But we do know that when we grew up, our parents were parents and our teachers and our friends and all people who were around us introduced us to a different patterns. Otherwise, I wouldn't be stingy and I wouldn't be jealousy and I wouldn't be hatred. We see that now in the terror in the world. It's bringing up from very young age, right? So we see it in the kindergarten. Okay, all the materials that the children were receiving, in order to develop some kind of patterns. So we are introducing ourselves through the visualization of the deity. We are introducing ourselves to healthier patterns again and again and again. Because remember, Gom is also a name for meditation in Tibetan. It's also a name for the Gompa, for the place we do the meditation. But the real meaning of Gom is practicing again and again, again and again. So when we do meditation on the deity, we visualize the deity. So what we do is we are being introduced our internal psychic unconsciousness again and again and again to healthier qualities, to healthier patterns. So what happens when we do that? It's some kind of restructuring of our internal psychic. So it's create repatterning, for example, those emotional habits that we have. It's heal traumas that we have, because traumas are embedded within the patterns that we have, the karmic patterns that we have. So it can heal traumas, we know that. And also, it creates some kind of a stability. All of a sudden, you're not the little wonder who is, just hiding in the corner or insecure. We create confidence that you cannot be a tantric practitioner who embedded the deity, the archetype, if you're not getting more confidence, more stability, and more openness. If those things are not changing within you, you want to reconsider the way you practice Tantra. Okay? That's, I would say, a very good measurement to you. If you know yourself, after a while practicing Tantra, you will know you become more stable, you become more confident, and you become more open to things that comes, and you're not shaken but by each one of them. So we know that the archetype, the practicing the archetype transform the psychological patterns. There is another way. Working with those archetypes is creating some kind of a mirror to our own potential. What does it mean, creating a mirror to our own potential? It's meaning that I'm not visualizing myself anymore as this little person who has a work, maybe a husband, maybe a wife, maybe children, succeed on a relative scale that somebody in the capitalist world have put in, how much money you have in the bank, if you have a house or not, a car or not, a spouse or not, a children or not. I mean, those are scales that you measure yourself, not because those are the real measurement. It's because somebody have put in those scales long before, and now you just measure yourself upon them. No, I'm not visualizing myself as this person. I'm visualizing myself as the deity, as the archetype, right? And remember, I'm not practicing, I'm not visualizing something which is external. Remember, we're talking about Yoga Tantra and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Although I see that the deity externally, I'm still the visualization process, and I will talk about it in a few minutes. The visualization process is taking place internally, not externally. So I'm talking about the mirroring. So instead that the deity will reflect what is outside, it reflects now my awakened nature that is already within each one of the practitioner, actually in each one of any creature. Sometimes we call it the inner nature, sometimes we call it the Buddha nature, but that's the reflection that I'm working with now. The mirror is reflecting my Buddha nature, my inherent nature, awakened nature, not the little me. Okay? So even if I'm seeing myself as the deity, as this archetype, this is a way of embodying the qualities that are already hidden in the psychic. They're already there, but it's needed to be reflected in a mirror. Where is the mirror? The mirror is not outside. The mirror is within me, because this Buddha nature, or the awakened nature, is already within me. So I need to be in touch with that. So this is another way, like for example, if you have children or you have been a child before, right? So for example, that the mother and father are mirroring to the child. They're mirroring to him when he is very young. They're mirroring to him what is best qualities. Sometimes when there is a dysfunctional family and they are mirroring to the child the bad qualities, I will call them, okay, as opposed to the good qualities. So sometimes this becomes somebody who is going to be a dysfunctional person in the future. So if the mother or the father is mirroring to the child, for example, you're stupid, you will never succeed. You're always doing mistakes. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a liar. You're a bad boy or girl. It's a mirroring. Now let's work with the good one. The mirroring that happens with the deity work is, what am I? I'm full of compassion. Let's say that if I'm Vajrayogini, so I'm holding the Kapala, which represent the fully understanding of emptiness, and I'm holding the trigung with the knife, and in a specific way that represents something else. And I'm wearing all those ornaments that are representing that I have completed the perfection of the six perfections. And the reason why I have a very long uh, hair, which is straight, is because I walk around the world with no lies. I see the world as it is. Those are symbols. Okay, each one of the deities represents symbols. Of course, we have to know them, but that's what I am mirroring now. Oh, I am the deity now. Who is the deity? The deity is the one who knows emptiness by perfect. He or she completed the six perfections. I need to know those six perfections. They work in the world with a full compassion, helping the world. They are standing on those figures. It seems like they're crushing them, right? But those figures are representing something else. They're representing the hatred and the attachment. So they completed the overcoming the transformation of hatred and attachment. So that's me now walking in the world. That's a mirroring. Now, again, you can say it's a brainwash. Yeah, it's a brainwash. I like this wash braining, right? Do it again and again and again and again. What do you think will happen by the end of this factory line? What do you think will happen? There will be a new shining deity that will come out. So how we do that? We're using imagination, but we're not using any imagination. If I were a child and I imagine now that I fly around the world, I'm a Superman. Maybe I'll go to the 16th floor and just try to fly. That's nice. It's also imagination, but it's imagination that has to do with fantasy. And imagination, we're not talking in the working with visualization. Imagination, it's not working with fantasy. Tantra uses very imaginative cognition. Okay, the hidden visualization, it's not any fantasy. You have to be very precise, and you have to understand each one of those representatives that is a representative of a quality. You need to understand that. You need to learn that. At the beginning, you learned it cognitively, but then it's embedded within you. So we do it in a very disciplined way. It's not just, sitting in the field and just, making a lot of fantasies. No, there is a very disciplined way how we do the visualization. There is very disciplined way how we do the imagination. So we need to understand that there is a big difference between fantasy. Fantasy leads to escapism. We don't want that. Okay. Or in a psychology term, we use the underground. Okay. We're running into the underground with the fantasy. Or we're using the imaginative awareness, which is structured, very structured, embodied, and transformative. So when we say, okay, visualize the deity, it's not just, okay, now I will imagine to myself a new deity. No, we know exactly why this deity is working on the underlying psychic to develop those qualities. Yeah, you can learn that. It's not secret. It's sacred, but it's not secret. But you want to learn that. I remember, I think I told you once, in one of my retreats, what I did, I took, Vajrayogini has 32 characters, okay? There is a reason why 32, we don't going to go into it. And I wrote a commentary about those characteristics. And the reason I wrote this commentary, it's not because I wanted to spread it around the world. It's not actually, it's in my computer. I gave it only to some of my friends, if they wanted to read that. It's because I wanted to learn what are those qualities. Because those representatives, those characteristics are qualities that no, it's my work plan. Do you understand? It's my work plan to develop those characters, to develop those qualities. And in some of them, I'm getting better, and in some of them, I still have a lot to do. But if I want to become, it's not, we're saying to become this deity, but if I want to become this enlightened being, okay, it will happen when I will be embedded in those qualities, or those qualities will be embedded within me. Now, I know you guys, you're thinking now, oh, but this is a lot of work. Maybe I'll go to Dzogchen. Because in Dzogchen, we don't need to work, right? We just get into the openness, do it again and again and again. Oh. Well, if you can do that, good luck. Don't waste your time here. If you can be in Trekche and you know how to stay there, don't do that. When I asked Melina, why do you want people to practice Tantra? She said, because most of the people need the Tantra in order to be open up to the future Mahamudra or Dzogchen. Yes, it's a work. Yes, it's doing. Yes. But also, I don't know, earning money is a work, right? Until you're becoming a sadhu that you don't need because everything is coming to you. But again, good luck. So this is the role of the imagination, okay? So, and the deity becomes the container for the psychological growth. I am growing up within this container that called this specific deity, not because I'm just staying there, because I'm developing. This is a growth. Growth is always something that happens. It's not stagnant. It's not something that is fixed. That's why it's called transformative growth. And then what we have in the, I would say, parallel Western psychology is, especially, as I told you, I learned that from from Lama Robert Priest, because he is a Jungian psychotherapist. And in the Jungian psychotherapy is you always work with what we call the shadow and also the archetypes and the collective unconsciousness that happened in the world. I don't want to go too much into it. It's more of the psychotherapist. Um, uh, let's leave it aside, okay? But we do know that the self, okay, the self from the psychology point of view, okay, not from the Buddhists that trying to create something that you will transform that, is the totality of being, okay? Our being in the totality form of it. That's what we call in psychology the self. Most people, they go to therapy because they don't have this self. It will not be nice, but I would say most of us have damaged self. Okay, we don't have this totality of being. Okay, so we do use this deity as a function, as a symbol of this wholeness, of this totality. Okay, again, not the external one. We become that. We transform to be that. And as I said before, we do need in order to transform something into something which is very high quality and has a very high characteristic and qualification and qualities like the deity, we do need a strong ego. We can't go like, oh, I'm so small and I'm so bad and I cannot do it and I will fail. We cannot do that. Who is going to be transformed? The little one? So do work on strengthening the ego before dissolving the ego, because the next step that we do in Yoga Tantra and Anuttara Yoga Tantra is that after, each one of the sadhanas have this part. It's going out, bringing out all those lights, touching, having the role of touching all the creatures in the world, also making a connection with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the world, and bringing in every cities, every power, every compassion, every love from the outside, because everything outside now has been enlightened. All the creatures that I touch them, because I'm the deity, so I can create people or creatures, I can create them enlightened. So I touched everybody. And I'm taking all those energies inside of me. And me, as a body, dissolve. And this dissolution is a dissolution of this ego. Who is me now? And in the end of the day, who am I? I'm just uh, I'm just a syllable on a cushion, either on a small cushion, in a size of a sesame seed, or maybe, I don't know, a pea. And I'm now dissolving another part, and another part, and another part, until there is this nada. And by the end of this nada, and what is there? So if there is nothing there, you touched what the intellectual part said, you touched the emptiness. Now you do it again and again, and maybe you're able to stay there, maybe at the beginning, I don't know, 5 seconds. And there is a process how you do that. Maybe one day in the future we'll learn that. You touched emptiness. Maybe you can stay there at the beginning 5 seconds, maybe later on 10 seconds, maybe after one minute. Actually, you're touching what we call Mahamudra, or we call Trekcho, after this dissolution. And then you come back to the world, because if we could stay there forever, we will become Buddhas, okay? So what's this? In order to be able to do that, the solution, in order not to go into the dissociation, we spoke about it before when we talk about the vessel, like what's happened to people who are getting into the dissolution part and getting into dissociation. So we need emotional stability. You cannot do that. You will be too afraid to stay there. And I can tell you, even from my experience, after practicing that again and again, in some conditions, when I go into this situation, all of a sudden there is a fear comes up. Okay? So we need this emotional stability. We need the psychological grounding. And we also need the ability to distinguish between imagination and reality. And I'm not talking with working with perception. I'm not talking Dzogchen now, okay? We need to know the difference between reality and imagination. If we don't do that, we will not be able to accomplish this part. So let me see if there is something else that I need to touch base with. Okay, so as I said, if we will not be able to have this stability, so we'll run away into dissociation, or what we call sometimes, that the spiritual bypassing, that we think that we are spiritual identity as the guru or the Buddha or whatever, but it's a spiritual bypassing, okay? We have to be very real where we are and when we're not. So when we have this process of open up, creating this external energy of bringing in the energy from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the creatures that we have been transformed into enlightened beings. All this energy comes in. And then there is the dissolution. And what we touch is what we call the non-self. But if you don't have a self, there cannot be a non-self. Think about it. If there is no ego, you cannot transform the ego. Do you understand the contradiction that we sometimes hear when we talk about Tantra? People say, oh, Tantra destroys the ego. No, I hope not. Or you find out that there is no self. How can you find out that there is no self if you don't identify the self? In order to negate something, you have to have something, right? Now, of course, and the Prasangika Madhyamika, they will say something else, which I'm not going to go into it now. This is a very high philosophical explanation about emptiness, and I'm not going to touch base with this. So the dissolution of the deity into emptiness and the non-self, actually, every practice of a deity, it ends, okay, the sadhana ends with the dissolving of the visualization into the emptiness. If you're not doing that by the end of your practice, I don't know what you're doing, because the whole process before that, going into refuge, evoking bodhicitta, giving a lot of argan offerings, purifying with Vajrasattva, all those, and then offering again and again and again, that's only the preparation. Doing the Guru Yoga, it's only a preparation to what? To the dissolution part. We needed that. We need the preparation. There is a reason why we do every part of the sadhana. But if you don't do the dissolution, there is no use for the previous parts. because if you want to come out as not as Lupondorit, but as Vajrayogini, for example, there is a place that needs to be transformed. How it can be transformed? The only way it can be transformed, it's from emptiness. Otherwise, I open the door and I go out from the room the same way I got in the room. And that's a process that works on the psyche. So I want to dissolve this rigid identity that I have of myself, which has been created since I was born again and again. Somebody called me my name, somebody was referring to me, somebody told me you are that and that and that, and I was thinking about myself, that and that and that. It's a very rigid identity. And I want to open to the spacious presence of this deity. And I want to be open to the direct awareness, and I want to be open to the experience of non-dual. Who is going to do it? Me? That just had dinner? Who's going to do it? From emptiness comes something. And when you do it again and again, you're going out and in. Every sadhana, you go in and out so many times. And when you do the sadhana again and again, you're going there. Something else is happening to you. Your mind becomes more flexible and not rigid and not stuck as we are on a daily basis. You're much more open and flexible because you melted your rigid identity and you became something else again and again, again and again, again and again. So we can see that the deity creates this psychological space, okay, this openness, where the confidence grows. If I have fears, it softens the fears. And if I relate to myself, and I can see that in my clinic, people are so criticizing about themselves. I'm not talking about the external world. So I became more compassionate. Because I became more compassionate, I can be more compassionate towards myself as well, not only towards others, right? And if I'm more compassionate towards myself, the relaxation happens so easy, so quick. Because when I'm criticizing myself or others, I'm, again, creating this rigid personality, these rigid qualities. I can't call them qualities, just patterns, rigid patterns, okay? And from psychological point of view, we do have this material that emerge in a different way. So you start to understand how it works, I hope, okay? I cannot explore everything because, it's in each tantra, it's worked differently, but also you have to discover that by yourself, because when you're doing the practice again and again, all of a sudden you feel something else happening within you. And that brings us to the next issue. We discussed that a lot at the beginning, that actually Tantra works at the Sambhogakaya level, which means embodied in the body. It's an energy level. It's not something solid, okay? When you're in the emptiness, you're part of the Dharmakaya. Now, in order to to embody in a Nirmanakaya, you have to go through the Sambhogakaya. You know, there is the Dharmakaya, which is the openness, awareness, empty, experience, I will say, okay? There are no words to describe what is there. And then there is the Nirmanakaya, which is the manifestation of something, okay? The manifestation of external. A teacher is a manifestation of a Buddha. So you go through the Sambhogakaya, and now the Sambhogakaya is energy. There are no forms there. So how do we work? That goes to the other part of the Tantrayana, which is, until now we spoke about the generation stage, how the generation stage works. Now we are going into the completion stage. Completion stages, and you have to go through the generation stage before. Because who is going to work with the energy level if you have not transformed the me into an energy, into the deity, into the archetype, and the process of the transformation have not taken place? So who is the one that the energy will be embodied within him? So we in Tantra insist that you feel, it's not just intellectual, you feel the deity in the body, not just imagine that. And in order to feel the deity, the archetype in the body, Tantra provides a lot of practices. Tuma, for example, is one of them. You know, one of my dear teachers, Lama Glenn Mullen, was here in Israel, and he gave us, I would say, two major Tantra's practices in his visit now. He gave the teaching, the empowerment and teachings of Amitayus Hayagriva, but he also gave the initiation and the teachings of Vajrayogini to those who did not have or those who had it. Only in Amitayus Hayagriva Tantra, he taught 13 types of tuma. So when we say tuma, we think it's one practice. I once made a list of all the tuma practices that I have received during the years from different teachers, and I counted more than 70. Now I have actually to add those 13, because I never had the Amitayus Hayagriva before in those 13 practices of tuma. So even if you think, and you don't need to do those 80, 70, 13 practices. Again, take one and master that, because it's not about knowing all those practices. It's about the one practicing one practice that will create the internal feeling of the energy within you as a deity. Because you're not you. The body is not body anymore. That's why in one part we do the dissolution. And then when we come out, there is this empty body meditation that we do. What is empty body? Empty from what? From this blood and bones and whatever. So what is there? Because still something is there. It's the Vajra body. Maybe you know those terms, maybe you don't know those terms, and we need to learn that, because if you practice the generation stages for a while, you start to feel the energy comes running in your body. If you're practicing yoga, you might know that even if without practicing any of the tantric, well, actually yoga is a tantra, but never mind, that's another discussion, okay? So if you work with those energy and you embodied them, what will be the result? The goal is not to feel the energy. The result will be that it will increase the vitality. Remember, Every deity is a 16 years old in terms of vitality. It will, the integration of the energy that will create new patterns within you. And you then align the subtle body with the winds and the elements and the channels and the tigles, whatever the name you want to call them. And that's create a very nice understanding, because I'm jumping ahead of time, but I'll say that because I think it's important. When you practice the completion stages practices, I'm not talking about specific practice. Now I'm talking about in general, the completion stages practices. I always, when I studied that back then, so I was trying to imagine myself, those yogis and yoginis that were staying in the caves where I stayed in my previous lives, okay? What are you doing there all day long? Are you getting into depression? Are you getting into feeling of loneliness? Do you feel missing? Do you feel, what are those feelings? Where do they go? I mean, we're staying there for so long. And that's very interesting, because we know in the West that when we do have those feelings of any kind of suffering, there is a tendency to go to something that creates different energy in the body. We call them all kinds of chemicals. The SSRI, for example, what we call Prozac for the family, or other drugs. Well, you know that the psychiatric medicine is a drug, right? You know that, but it's a legal drug, unlike the heroin, unlike the coke, unlike all those kind of drugs. But what are they doing? All those kind of drugs, what they do, it's that they tackle a specific nerve in our psychic, in our nerve system, and that's create some kind of a hormone, some kind of chemical effect that this chemical effect that happens contradict the feeling that I had before. Like, for example, I'm very sad, and I want to increase let's say, the serotonin level, because serotonin creates more stability and more joyful feeling. So I will take something. I'm not going to go into the chemical part now, but I will take something, and that will create the injection of this hormone, of this chemical into my mind. Now, they were in the caves, right? They didn't have the psychiatric that will give them the SSRI, the Prozac, or the whatever. And they didn't have any access to heroin or whatever, okay, or to crack, or so what did, or to, well, they did have an access to alcohol, but that's another issue. So what did they do? They did something very interesting. They realized that if they have their intention in the, now we call that hippocampus, okay, but back then they called the third eye, the internal, in between the head, okay, here in between, in the middle of the head. And if they have the intention there, all of a sudden there is a flood of a chemical. So they don't need to take something external. If they want joyful, all they have to do is just put their attention on the hippocampus, what we call this now hippocampus, or whatever the name, exactly here, exactly in the heart, what we call the navel or the secret chakra. And if you go into biological sketch of the body and go on the glands, you will see that each one of those glands sits where what we call chakras. And where the attention goes, the energy goes. So they started to play in the channels, in the chakras, in the glands. And what happened? Floods of chemicals came out. What happens with those chemicals when they come out? Well, in some places, when you put too much chemicals, you can go crazy. So it has to be with under the supervision of a teacher. But that's the completion stage practices. And that's why you become more confident. That's why when you become more stabilized, you don't need the SSRIs. You don't need them. You become more happy. We always say that the Buddha is happy. If I'll go into my heart and I will do the right meditation within my heart, I will release a lot of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone of love. Everybody knows that. You don't need to go and do MDMA. You don't need to go and give birth in order to feed birth and then to create this oxytocin. All you have to do is just put your mind there. Whoop. And if you know how to do it and you learn how to do it, you're full of love and compassion to the whole world. That's what the oxytocin does. Do you understand how Tantra works? It was very boring up there in the caves, I can tell you. We had to create something. We had to create something. We had to explore something. What would we explore? There were no books, no people. The only thing we could explore is our own body. Okay? You can do it as well. And you can be your own psychotherapy. You don't need to go to the external psychotherapist. You don't need to go to a psychiatric. Well, at the beginning, in order to create the right ego, you must do that. But then, if you work within that, and that's the completion stage practices. They create what we call the lung and the prana. It's the energy that comes and flows. And the tiglas are those hormones, little chemicals that runs in the body. And then you don't need Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds anymore. You have your own LSD in your minds. So what we see is that the deity practice ultimately reveals that the practitioner and the deity, the archetype, are not separate. So that's created the non-dual part. We create the non-dual, which is something that as long as we have me and that, or he, she, whatever, the external phenomena, we will not be able to be full embedded in these enlightened qualities of happiness, what we call Buddha. So that's why I wanted to emphasize why practicing deity is so important. Now, before we started this class, there was a question that came up with regard to practicing Dharmapalas. And I want to emphasize, Dharmapalas are very important, but they are not deities. They are Dharmapalas. Deity is a fully completed Buddha. And as such, I hope that after this class, you will understand that if you want to become this deity, you have to do something about it. It's not just, oh, I wish I will be this deity. It's not like that. There is a work to do in order to become this deity. But Dharmapalas are not Buddhas. Dharmapalas are Buddha's protectors, very important protectors. We want to work with the protectors. Lama Lina worked with the Akajati protector a long time. I work with a different, I also sometimes work with a Kajati, but I work with a different Dharmapala. Because this is part of my practice. And I guess that some of you have heard that His Holiness, for example, is refusing to give any teachings or empowerment, and is asking also his teachers, his lamas in his lineage, not to give any teachings or any empowerment to those who are practicing Shugden Dharmapala. There is a reason for that. I'm not going to go into that. So they are very important, but they are not the deities. They are not the archetypes. So if you think that you're practicing a Dharmapala, think again. If you want to get what we just described, in so many words, what is the benefits of practicing the Tantra and practicing the deity? If you want to put time in Dharmapalas are creating a lot of protection. There is a mistake thinking. Lama Lina said that, and I know that from my experience, that when you work with Tantra, you need to have a protection, and that's why we need a Dharmapala. But there is a mistake thinking that the protection means lovey-dovey love, life, Everything is perfect now. Everything is so peaceful. On the contrary, if you work in Tantra, even if you work with your Dharmapalas, sometimes your Dharmapala will come and will push a button that your whole world will crash. From there, you will have your growth. It's not about Dharmapala will protect me and I will have just, easy life. And there are many ways that those Dharmapalas comes and, push the buttons in order to direct you into the right. Because, when everything is okay and I have everything and, I have my beautiful vacations and family and everything is going fine and I have my needs and I feel healthy and everything is amazing. How much time do I practice, do you think? Not much. There was another question that somebody wrote to me about emptiness. I think that I answered that from a different angle. It's not about that they were asking me about how do you practice understanding of emptiness while there is a lot of physical pain. Now, if you're mastering completion stage practices, you don't need now the paracetamol or those amphetamines. You already have that possibility to push a button and overflow those chemicals into your body. Do you understand that? And then physical pain becomes something else. Lama always says that since she has this arthritis, I think that's the name, and she has a lot of pain, sometimes she said, I can practice in the level of 6 and 7. Sometimes I can even a level of pain out of 10. Okay, 6 or 7 level of pain. It's very painful. How she does that? Well, Buddhas, there's a problem with the Buddhas because you cannot ask them how they do that. They just do it. So, yeah. So we still have, I think, time for one question because we are running out of time. And before we go to the question, I just want to give you some information about the next course. So I spoke, when I was in Sopema, I spoke with Lama Lina about what next, okay? And she thought that it will be very beneficial to people do the working with emotions. Now, I know that maybe all of you, but maybe many of you did the working with emotion retreat with Lama Lina. And, but as she said, for her, I mean, it always very quickly. We don't have enough time. So we were thinking about doing something for 6, 7, 8 weeks. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be 8 weeks of classes. Like, for example, I think in 2 weeks, we will start the course on the 16th, but the following week is already the day before Christmas. So I'm not going to do a day before Christmas. Everybody's going to fly all over to the family and everything. So it's a holiday. So we will skip this class. But what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the working with the mandalas. Each one of the Buddhas, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas in the mandala, like if you did the working with emotion with Lama Lina, you know, each one of them represent the klesha, the negative emotion. On one hand, when you work that and you identify that on your daily life and you transform that, that's how you attain the wisdom of this specific Buddha. Okay? And that's why each one of the deities, they wear this 5 crown, this 5 skull cap crown, because each one of them is representing those 5 Dhyanis Buddhas after the transforming of the negative emotion into the wisdom. So they completed that. So it's going to be very interesting to see, to work more closely about the understanding of the negative emotion, how it's manifest in our life on one hand, and then how we are working in order to change that and to transform that into the wisdom. So if you remember when Lama Lina did the working with emotion, so there are 4 stages. The last stage is the Dzogchen part, okay? I'm not going to go into the Dzogchen part because I think that the first 3, which are tantric, very tantric methods, are very important to master them. And then when you practice Dzogchen and you have this mastering and understanding the negative emotion and how to transform them into wisdom, then when you embedded the 4th stage of how you work with this in Dzogchen, that's amazing. It can be like that. But first we have to know. So as you know, Lama Lina is introducing the mandala at the beginning. You know, where is every Buddha? What is the color? What is the emotion that relates to that? So we are going to use Lama Lina's short introduction to that. We will screen that, the short introduction, how she does that. But then we're going to take every class and stay on each one of them. And you'll have the chance during the week to practice with this emotion, not only on the cushion, to try to develop some kind of mindfulness, how it works in your life. Okay, because for example, I don't know, if we'll go to a Muga City, the competition and the jealousy and the envy and all those, and he said, "Oh, I'm not a jealous person." And then all of a sudden we see that, you know, a lot of things in your daily life happens not necessarily on the cushion, because I translated a lot of the Lama Lina's working with emotion, and most of the time I was sitting on my cushion, try to invoke this emotion that, for example, the fear or the anger or whatever, but it wasn't intense like it was in daily life. Well, we're going to work with daily life. It's going to be intense. I can promise you that. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. So there is a registration form for that, so you can register if you know people. I mean, that's an introduction to the idea. I'm not going to go. It's not initiation and it's not secret practice. So if you know friends who wants to work on their on these emotions, issues, and they can benefit from that. So you can give them this the opportunity to register. The thing is, they need to know that this is a tantric practice, even if they didn't have any initiation to a deity. Okay? So, one more question. If somebody has a question about this deity, isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing to think, to see how it works? If you know, eventually. No questions? Okay. Somebody wants to say something because we just completed the course. Thank you for the hearts. Okay, so we'll conclude with a dedication. May this amazing practice will bring a lot of happiness to everybody around the world. A lot of happiness, confidence, stability, and a lot of compassion and love that will be bestowed on all creatures in the world. Gewadi Nyododam Chechi Salam Gopasha. So I think that Leila already put the form in the Vajra World. If you're not part of the Vajra World WhatsApp group, so I think it's in the mails that Leila sends, with so you can join that, because most of the all the communication that we do is through this group. And not only what I'm doing, I ask my friends, Javeria and Lilith, if they do something that has to do with Tantra, please put it in. And so they invite you to do this practice and that practice, which is very nice. So register just join this WhatsApp group. It's easier for us to communicate. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And thank you very much for the Russian translation, and for Edith, the Hebrew translation. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I think that everybody who needs that appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, guys. I'll see you next time.